Have you ever stopped to think about what really matters after the age of 61? In a society that seems to increasingly value youth, many feel lost, as if life is ending. But what if I told you that this is the perfect time to free yourself from everything that no longer serves you? Imagine being able to leave behind not only concerns about appearance or the weight of expectations, but also those beliefs that keep you stuck in the past. In Stoicism, great sages such as Epictetus, Seneca, and Marcus Aurelius teach us that true freedom comes from detachment and consciously choosing what we truly value. Are you ready to discover the 9 things you no longer need in your life? Get ready, because this journey can transform your view on aging and, more importantly, on living. Let's get started. Number 1, seeking approval from others. It's curious how, throughout life, we often shape our actions and decisions to please or receive validation from others. This desire for approval seems harmless at first, but upon closer inspection, we realize that it can trap us in a subtle way. Epictetus teaches us that we should only focus on what is within our control, and the opinions of others are definitely not. There is nothing more liberating than understanding that living according to the expectations of others is a waste of vital energy. Once this truth is absorbed, the mind opens to a new perspective. The one who really should approve of your actions is yourself. If Marcus Aurelius constantly reminds us of the ephemerality of life, why waste this precious time seeking approval that will never be fully satisfying? Imagine the following situation. You are faced with an important decision and find yourself dividing your mind between what you truly believe is right and what others will think. This is not uncommon. What would Epictetus do in your place? He would tell you to focus only on what you can control and act according to your rational nature. And this doesn't mean being selfish or arrogant, but rather being true to yourself. When you act with integrity, aligned with your own values, the opinions of others become irrelevant. This doesn't mean that we should disregard constructive criticism, but rather that we should learn to differentiate between what comes from the ego of others and what is truly useful for our personal development. Over the years, Seneca has warned about the corrosive impact of constantly seeking acceptance from others. He argues that when we allow external judgments to determine our worth, we become slaves to that expectation. Wouldn't it be wiser to take control of our own lives, deciding for ourselves what is relevant and important? Imagine a person who, after decades of living to please others, finally realizes that much of what they have done has been in vain. By following this pattern, they may have missed precious moments of authenticity, moments that could have been lived according to their own beliefs and desires. What can we learn from this? Simple. Free yourself from this cycle. When you are in tune with your own principles, as the great Stoic philosophers taught, a profound clarity emerges. Instead of seeking external validation, seek to improve your actions based on what truly matters to you. And from there, the journey becomes much smoother. In fact, when we stop seeking approval from others, we begin to find true inner peace. This prepares us to understand other common mistakes in life, such as holding grudges, which we will address next. Number 2, holding grudges or old wounds. Holding grudges is like carrying a backpack full of rocks day after day. At first, it seems like a bearable weight, but as time goes by, it becomes an unbearable burden. Marcus Aurelius, in his diaries, constantly reminds us of the importance of forgiveness, not for the sake of excessive kindness, but for the freedom it brings to the soul. Grudges keep us stuck in past events, sapping our present energy. By carrying these wounds, we stop enjoying the present, something that Stoicism values immensely. For Seneca, time is the most valuable resource, and wasting that resource by nursing resentment is one of the greatest follies someone can make. Many people believe that holding grudges is a way of maintaining power over those who have hurt us, but the truth is the opposite. Grudges trap us in a cycle of negativity. Epictetus would tell us that this is one of the areas where we have control, how we respond to offenses and injustices. We cannot control what others do, but we can choose not to let these events control our inner peace. The best way to deal with this: free yourself from this emotional burden, just as you would let go of that backpack full of rocks we mentioned. Try to visualize this act of letting go as if you were letting go of an unnecessary weight, allowing your mind to become lighter and clearer. A practical example: imagine a family situation in which a relative did something that deeply hurt you many years ago. You carry this pain with you, allowing it to affect your family gatherings, your conversations, and even your most intimate thoughts. Now ask yourself, what is the purpose of keeping this wound open? Marcus Aurelius advises us to be pragmatic in our relationships, focusing on what we can control and leaving aside what is beyond our reach. In this case, would it be possible to forgive and move on, even without forgetting what happened, simply so that you can live more lightly and fully? The process of letting go of resentment may not be immediate, but it is a constant exercise in self-reflection and self-control, something that the Stoics practiced daily. And when we are able to let go of these old wounds, something transformative happens. We make room for growth, for the present, for a life with more purpose and serenity. As Seneca observed, living well is not about accumulating resentment, but rather learning to transform our experiences into wisdom. And by freeing ourselves from this burden, we are ready to deal with other attachments, as we will see in the next point. Number 3, being too attached to material possessions. Many people spend their lives chasing more and more possessions, as if accumulating more and more possessions were the path to true happiness. However, Marcus Aurelius warns us that everything we have is ephemeral. Nothing we own, be it a house, a car, or any other valuable object, stays with us when we leave this life. Excessive attachment to material goods only makes us vulnerable, because the more we value what is outside of ourselves, the more we are at the mercy of circumstances. Stoics like Seneca teach us that true wealth lies in that which cannot be taken away: our character, our wisdom, and our virtues. When someone becomes too attached to material goods, they end up living in constant anxiety. The fear of losing what they have takes over, and this state of restlessness takes away peace of mind. Epictetus would remind us that although we can enjoy the things that life gives us, we should never let ourselves be defined by them. A practical example of this would be when someone buys an object of desire, such as a new car, and in the first few days there is a feeling of euphoria. But soon this feeling wears off, and the car becomes just another item. What is left, then, is the incessant search for something else to fill that void, a never-ending cycle. In addition, attachment to material goods can distance us from true human connections. By focusing too much on accumulating, we often neglect the relationships that really matter. Imagine someone who spends their life working endless hours, sacrificing time with their family, just to buy a bigger house or maintain a luxurious standard of living. Seneca would tell us that this person is exchanging what is essential for what is superfluous. And when old age arrives, it is common for these sacrifices to seem in vain, because in the end, what brings true satisfaction are the bonds we cultivate, not the things we possess. Freeing ourselves from this excessive attachment does not mean giving up everything, but rather redefining what really matters. Living a simpler life with less attachment brings a freedom that few experience. Instead of accumulating things, why not invest more in experiences and wisdom? The teachings of Epictetus, Marcus Aurelius, and Seneca make it clear that true happiness cannot be found on the shelves of a store. And when we understand this, we prepare ourselves to face other challenges, such as the next one, excessive concern with appearance. Number 4, worrying excessively about appearance. Today's society, especially with the advent of social media, has placed appearance on a pedestal as if image were the ultimate measure of a person's worth. However, the great Stoic philosophers, such as Marcus Aurelius, remind us that outward appearance is a fleeting illusion. He writes in his Meditations about the fragility of the body and the inevitable passage of time. Spending a disproportionate amount of energy and resources trying to maintain a perfect image is, in the Stoics' view, a losing battle. What really matters, as Epictetus emphasized, is character and virtue. These are the true ornaments of a person. It is natural to want to feel good about yourself, and taking care of your appearance has its place, but overdoing it can lead to a series of emotional and psychological problems. When concern for appearance becomes an obsession, the individual disconnects from who he or she really is. Imagine a person who spends hours every day in front of the mirror looking for flaws to correct, or who constantly compares himself or herself to others. This practice creates a cycle of insecurity. Seneca teaches us that true confidence does not come from how others see us, but from how we see ourselves internally, in our integrity and values. A clear example of this is the pressure to look younger, especially after the age of 60. Many invest in creams, surgeries, and fashionable clothes, believing that youth is directly linked to relevance or social acceptance. However, the Stoics teach that beauty lies in maturity, in the wisdom accumulated over the years. Epictetus, in his Reflections, would encourage us to value inner growth rather than worrying about the external signs of age. A wise person understands that the radiance that really matters comes from within, and not from the wrinkles that appear over time. When someone lets go of this excessive concern with appearance, something wonderful happens. A lightness emerges, a freedom to be who they really are without the need to conform to superficial standards. And this brings a peace that nothing can buy. This does not mean that we should abandon self-care, but rather re-evaluate what we are really cultivating. And as we let go of this relentless pursuit of aesthetic perfection, we can direct our energy towards something deeper and more meaningful. This sets us up to face another common pitfall, working tirelessly without purpose. Number 5, working tirelessly without purpose. Many people dedicate most of their lives to work, but not always with a clear meaning or real purpose. Work in itself can be a source of fulfillment, as long as it is done with a goal that goes beyond the simple accumulation of goods or the incessant pursuit of status. Marcus Aurelius often reflected on duty and the role that each person plays in the world. Work, for him, should be an expression of our contribution to society, and not a means of getting lost in a vicious cycle of tasks that do not elevate us. Epictetus would tell us that if work does not help us cultivate virtue, it can easily become a meaningless distraction. The problem begins when people find themselves stuck in a routine that does not bring meaning. Seneca, for example, warned against empty work, activities that consume our time but do not nourish our spirit. Imagine someone who spent their entire life chasing professional goals, sacrificing precious moments with their family, only to realize in the end that those material achievements did not bring the expected satisfaction. Working without purpose is like rowing a boat without a destination, a lot of effort to get nowhere. Work should be a tool to achieve something greater, not an end in itself. A practical example of this can be found in the many people who, upon reaching retirement, find themselves disoriented, not knowing how to fill their days. The reason? They were so absorbed by work that without it, they cannot find meaning in their lives. To avoid this, it is important, as Seneca would suggest, to invest in activities that really matter. How about using your work time to develop skills that can contribute to a greater purpose? participating in volunteer projects, helping a community, or even learning something new that brings personal fulfillment are ways to work with purpose. What if work is necessary for a living, but not exactly inspiring? The answer lies in finding a balance. Marcus Aurelius would say that we can give our best in any task, even the simplest, if we understand that they are part of a bigger picture. The important thing is not to lose sight of the purpose of our actions. When we put work in its proper place with a clear sense of purpose, we avoid endless fatigue and make room for other important aspects of life, such as the quality of our relationships, which brings us to the next point: toxic relationships. Number 6, toxic relationships. Relationships are part of life, and the quality of these connections can largely determine our well-being. However, many find themselves trapped in toxic relationships, where the emotional and affective exchange is unbalanced, generating more wear and tear than growth. Epictetus taught us that we are responsible for our reactions and for what we choose to allow in our lives. If someone insists on dragging us into a cycle of negativity, we need to evaluate to what extent they are contributing to this dynamic. After all, as Seneca warned us, staying close to people who drain us emotionally can prevent us from achieving the peace we so seek. Many times, people feel obligated to maintain certain relationships out of fear of being alone or due to social pressures, without realizing that this closeness is one of the causes of their unhappiness. Imagine a person who constantly criticizes, puts others down, and maintains an environment of continuous tension. Marcus Aurelius would remind us that, although we cannot control the behavior of others, we can control who we choose to spend our time with. This means that it is necessary to establish clear boundaries and, in some cases, even cut ties with those who harm us. Of course, it is not always easy to leave a toxic relationship, especially when there are family or long-standing ties involved. In this case, it is important to work on emotional strengthening, as Epictetus would suggest. Instead of trying to change the other person, we can focus on shielding ourselves emotionally and practicing indifference towards toxic behavior. This does not mean that we should accept everything passively, but rather learn not to react to provocations and criticism. A practical example is to avoid fruitless arguments and cultivate inner calm, an exercise in patience that strengthens us to better deal with these situations. As we distance ourselves from relationships that cause us more harm than good, we begin to notice a transformation in our own energy and outlook on life. Freeing ourselves from these bonds allows new and healthy connections to flourish. This is a process that requires courage, but, as Seneca stated, it is worth seeking out a circle of people who share our values and who inspire us to grow. By surrounding ourselves with relationships that elevate us, we gain more strength to face everyday challenges, like the rush and hustle and bustle of modern life, which is our next point. Number 7, the haste and rush of everyday life. Modernity has brought about a constant rush, where it seems that there is never enough time for all the tasks we have to accomplish. This feeling of always racing against the clock directly affects our peace of mind. Epictetus would warn us to pay attention to what really matters, not to let ourselves be carried away by the illusion that life is an endless series of urgent tasks. When we rush from one thing to another without time to reflect or enjoy the present, we lose sight of what Stoicism values: presence and peace of mind. Seneca, in his letters, talks about the importance of controlling time and not letting it control us. He said that it is not the lack of time, but rather the way we use it. When we let ourselves be carried away by the rush, without time for rest and reflection, we end up wasting the most precious thing we have. Imagine someone who lives in a rush, always rushing to complete the next task, without ever stopping to appreciate the moment or ask themselves if what they are doing really matters. This person may reach the end of the day, the week, or even their life, feeling like they've gone through everything without really living. To change this, it's essential to learn to say no to unnecessary commitments and to establish priorities. As Marcus Aurelius would suggest, we need to focus on what's within our reach and what brings real value to our lives. This includes simplifying the demands we place on ourselves. One practical tip is to set aside periods of time to reflect, meditate, or simply breathe. Seneca would recommend using these moments to contemplate life, to organize the mind and realign goals with what really matters. The practice of mindfulness, for example, is a contemporary way of applying this Stoic principle of living in the present. True freedom comes when we learn to stop and enjoy the journey without worrying so much about the finish line. When we let go of this constant rush, we realize that life flows more smoothly and that there is room for joy and connection with others. This detachment from the rush also helps us to be kinder to ourselves, which prepares us to deal with an emotionally heavy issue, regret over past decisions, which will be our next topic. Number 8, blaming yourself for past decisions. We have all made decisions that we regret. It is part of the human experience to look back and wish we had done something differently. However, Stoicism teaches us to approach these moments constructively. Epictetus would remind us that the past is not under our control, and it is useless to waste time dwelling on what cannot be changed. The important thing is to focus on the present, on what we can do from now on. Blaming ourselves for past mistakes is like carrying a heavy anchor that prevents progress. Seneca emphasized that we need to learn from our mistakes, but never let them paralyze us. How many times have you seen people who cannot move forward because they are always stuck in their mistakes? They mentally replay the same scenarios, wondering what they could have done differently. Marcus Aurelius, in his Meditations, teaches us to practice acceptance. He said that we should embrace what life brings us, because each experience, good or bad, contributes to our growth. If we make mistakes in the past, it does not define us. It only teaches us. A practical example is when someone decides to change their life in their 60s or 70s, overcoming mistakes they made at work or in raising children. There is always time to rewrite one's own story, regardless of what happened before. A good way to deal with regret is to practice self-awareness, something Epictetus would encourage us to do. Ask yourself, what did this mistake teach me? And based on that answer, determine how you can act differently in the future. This takes the focus off guilt and puts the emphasis on evolution. For example, if in the past someone prioritized work over family, they can now dedicate more quality time to loved ones. Stoicism suggests that true wisdom lies in learning from the past without getting emotionally attached to it. When we let go of this relentless self-criticism, we create space for genuine change. Guilt can be transformed into fuel for growth. Instead of regretting what could have been, we can focus our energies on what can still be done. This also allows us to look to the future with more serenity, especially when dealing with the fear of getting older, which brings us to our last point. Number 9, the fear of getting old. Aging is a natural part of life, but for many, the fear of getting older can become a constant shadow. From a young age, we are exposed to a culture that values youth and, in a way, makes us believe that aging is something to be feared. Wrinkles, gray hair, and the loss of certain physical abilities are viewed with fear, as if each new year brings with it a loss. This fear can make us resist the passage of time, as if it were possible to stop the hands of the clock. However, by fearing aging, we miss the opportunity to see all that this phase of life can offer us. At 61 or older, it is time to accept aging as a valuable part of our journey. Each new phase of life brings its own beauties, and maturity is one of the greatest of them. It is at this time that we begin to realize that what really matters is not appearance or physical strength, but the serenity and wisdom that time has brought us. Aging is not a loss, but a transformation. You have lived many experiences, overcome challenges, and accumulated knowledge that only time can provide. These stories and this experience are what make you a person with a depth that youth has not yet recognized. When you let go of your fear of aging, you begin to value the present more, to enjoy what life has to offer now. There is a freedom in not having to chase so many things anymore. The tranquility of someone who has gone through many phases and learned to take care of what really matters becomes evident. Instead of fearing the future, you can face it with gratitude, knowing that each new day is an opportunity to live with more wisdom and peace. The worries that used to consume so much time and energy no longer carry the same weight because you have learned to choose your battles and prioritize what really makes a difference to your well-being. Accepting aging is an act of courage and at the same time of freedom. When you embrace this phase of life without fear, you discover that there is still much to be experienced. The fear of aging disappears when you realize that life, in all its phases, is a gift. Each year that passes is a new achievement, full of opportunities to live life to the fullest. And with the experience you have accumulated, you are more prepared than ever to enjoy everything the future has to offer with ease, wisdom, and serenity. Each of the 9 things we have mentioned here represents an unnecessary burden that we can free ourselves from. As the years go by, we realize that working without purpose, maintaining toxic relationships, or letting guilt and haste consume us no longer makes sense. There comes a time when the priority becomes emotional well-being, inner peace, and the quality of the moments we live. What really matters now is serenity, the freedom to make decisions that respect our desires, and the joy of being surrounded by those who truly love us. Leaving behind what no longer serves us makes room for a better, simpler, and more meaningful life. Getting older is not about losing, it is about acquiring the wisdom necessary to know what is worthwhile and what we can leave behind. It is the opportunity to live more fully, with fewer worries and more moments of true joy. By letting go of these 9 things, you are not giving up anything important. In fact, you are gaining more freedom to be who you are, to enjoy each day more lightly, and focus on what truly brings you happiness. After all, after the age of 61, life can be even more beautiful, full of moments of peace and deep satisfaction with everything we have already experienced and with what is yet to come. Conclusion. Throughout this video, you learned 9 things you don't need to live fully after the age of 61. Now it's your turn to act. What are you willing to let go of? Each of these lessons is a key that can unlock a new chapter in your life, an invitation for you to live with more freedom and purpose. Are you ready to make this change? Think about the small actions you can take today to begin this journey of detachment. If you got this far, write "full life" in the comments to show that you are a winner who completed the video. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more content like this. Share this video with those who may find it useful. Now, I recommend you watch this video to continue learning about Stoicism. Big hug and see you next time.